Well, everyone loves a happy ending, but you don't always get that in the mortgage process, right? Sometimes loans just don't make it to closing. And there are many different reasons for that. We're really going to hone in on three reasons why that does happen, just so you can be aware, make sure it doesn't happen to you, and you'll know the right questions to ask. That's coming up next with Bill. Hello, welcome in. I am Ben George. He is Bill Litton, Regional President at Cross Country Mortgage there in Chadsford, Pennsylvania. As always, if you have any questions, the best place to start online, smartmortgageshow.com, or take advantage of the free 15-minute mortgage and loan consultation. Kind of begin that process, answer a lot of the questions you might have about home buying. And I know one of the questions that come up, Bill, quite a bit is closing, right? People want to know closing costs and these sorts of things. It's a big part of the process. But today I want to talk to you about why don't loans make it to closing? I don't think we ever talk about this because again, we don't like to focus on the negative side of things, but this is a the reality of the process is not every loan makes it.
Yeah. So like you said, everybody likes a happy ending. And, I think that the settlement table is just a great celebration because it's one of those milestones in life. Buying a house is just a super big deal and it should be celebrated. And, we're with the end in mind. We're always thinking about how we make that an enjoyable experience, but that's not always the case. And there are sometimes things go to settlement and it gets there and there's a ton of turbulence and it could have been avoided. But what about the loans that never get there because the people just don't qualify? And so, I think it's the qualification piece and the three main spots during qualification, credit, income, and funds to close. But it's in that qualification piece that these loans kind of blow up and never get to the table.
Yeah, we're going to go through those one by one, those three pieces that you pointed out. But I just want to quickly touch on what you just said because I think that's so important. The settlement table, it should be a good feeling, right? It should be a celebratory occasion and not one where if you've been through the home buying process, I mean, it's happened to me once where I was a little nervous that day. Like I didn't know quite what to expect. I wasn't one of the first mortgages I got, I wasn't really sure what that closing number was going to be until just a little before we went to close. Like it wasn't a good feeling necessarily versus our last time we got it. We knew exactly what to expect. We went in, we signed, like we were excited about everything. It truly is. You want that to be a time where you are able to relax, enjoy the moment rather than really worrying about, oh, is something going to go wrong or something that I didn't expect going to pop up all of a sudden.
Yeah. And for people who do this a few times in their lives, it's, their expectations, they don't know what to expect. And when you keep asking for documents and, the process can be tedious, you start to wonder, am I really getting this loan? And if you make the process, excruciating or worse than it needs to be, now you're certainly, kind of getting people riled up over a lot of times what could be nothing. And we want that experience to be fun at the table. And we want to make sure you get there every time, which is what's most important.
Yeah, sure is. So let's talk about some of the reasons and why this happens, Bill. You mentioned credit first. So what can go wrong with the credit that can end up throwing things off track?
Yeah. So number one, it's credit reports. It's not just about the credit scores and, credit scores are the news headline. Everybody wants to know what their score is. They're worried about their scores. Their scores are important for sure, but it's the data in the report. It's the material in the credit report, the actual trade lines. And look, if you have an 800 credit score and you've never missed a payment in your life, well, there's not as much analysis that needs to be done. And for those folks, there's probably a lot less fallout, but not everybody's in that boat. In fact, there's a pretty large percentage of the credit reports that we review that they've had some delinquency, some charge-offs or collections. Maybe they've disputed some accounts. If, on an FHA loan, Ben, there's an issue with disputed accounts where you essentially, it makes it extremely difficult to get a loan if you've just disputed an account. And a lot of times people or credit repair folks will tell people to dispute many accounts. Well, if you don't look for the disputes, and a lot of loan officers fail to do so, and you get towards your settlement date and now there's disputes and now you can't get the loan, you're not going to make it to the settlement table.
All right. So credit the first thing. So how do you, I guess, Bill, once we go through each one of these, you can kind of talk about how how can you help prevent some of these issues with credit? Just for anyone that's going into it, going, okay, well, what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen to me?
Yeah, and I think it's just you got to find a lender that, and you got to pick up on the cues. And when you're talking to a lender, if they seem to just be fast talking you to get you off the phone and they want to race through the process, then they're probably not analyzing that credit report under a magnifying glass. But what we do is we review it in detail, and we also, we have a checklist, right? It's kind of like, the pilot who's flown this 747 for 10 years, but he pulls up his pre-flight checklist every single time. We essentially have a pre-flight checklist that we go down because we want to eliminate human error. We want to make sure we touch on each part that's important. And it's about, with credit reports, it's about the details. In fact, with mortgages, with all three of these items we're going to talk about today, it's the details.
It's all the details. So the details here, going through credit, we just touched on. Income's next. Another big part of getting the mortgage is having the income to support that. So where do things go wrong in this area?
So another area, I think, where, a lot of pre-approvals, people will, mortgage companies will pre-approve people without looking at the income at all. They'll take a verbal on it, or, they'll just look at the W-2s and the pay stubs. And the W-2s are great, but they don't break down bonuses, overtime, commission. Or, you might have somebody who they've got a mileage reimbursement. Well, that's a form of income, but don't just assume you can use it. We need to look at the guidelines for each loan type to see, A, does that loan type allow us to use it? And B, if it does, do we meet the guidelines? Have we received it long enough? Is it consistent? So it's, any piece of income that we enter into the application, we fully vet to make 100% sure that the underwriter is not going to come back and say, that's ineligible. You cannot use that income. Now our debt ratio doesn't work and we have a big problem.
How often does the income number change because someone either changes jobs or something happens over that time period where they begin the mortgage hunt and then find their home and try to secure that? How much of that income piece is just on that person from having some changes during that process?
Yeah, believe it or not, Ben, more often than you would think.
Okay.
And so the other thing we like to do is when we issue a pre-approval, we put a warning in that pre-approval that basically says, hey, if you are changing your position or changing your job or your compensation's adjusted, any component, just let us know. There's a good chance we can work through it if we know about it and we plan together. If you don't let us know about it and we don't plan together, there's a larger chance it's going to permit you or prevent you from getting to the settlement table.
All right, we're talking about the main reasons why loans never make it to closing. We've talked credit, income, and the final piece here, Bill, to explore is the funds to close. So what happens with this? Is this something where somebody doesn't have the funds, where the number changes? What goes wrong here?
Well, I think it's a couple things that you said. Number one, not having the funds. And what I see a lot is, here's a big one, okay? I was working with a veteran recently, and that veteran on a VA loan, the veteran, if they've not done this before, they think they can get into a house with zero out of pocket. What a VA loan does is allows you to put zero money down, right? But in essence, it's not zero out of pocket because you still have closing costs and prepaids. Let's just say that the real estate taxes on the property are $10,000 a year, and the lender's not familiar with how many months of taxes are due in southeastern Pennsylvania. I've seen this so many times. Big national lender, the client, it says on there they need $10,000, which they've not been made aware of. Nobody's pointed that number out to them. They come to me and I'm like, well, it says here that you need 10,000. And then they say, what do you mean? This is a VA loan. It's zero down. Well, absolutely. And, VA loans are awesome, fantastic loans, but they don't cover the closing costs. And not only is it 10,000, but they didn't put the right amount of escrows in. It's really going to be like 18,000. And then that is a absolute sticker shock situation that is unnecessary. So we see that a lot. That's the one of the big ones. We also see, as you mentioned, like things change, right? The documents don't look the way that they were presented to. You tell them you're going to need $20,000 for settlement, but when you get the bank statements, there's 20,000 in there, but the funds aren't eligible.
Well, I know it's kind of everybody's worst fear for something like this happening. How often, Bill, just to kind of give people a sense, just in general, not necessarily with you guys, but just in general, how often do these kind of things happen for people going through the mortgage process? Is it pretty rare? Is it fairly common? I guess common being, 1 out of 4 times, 1 out of 5. Like, what does that look like typically?
I think that there's issues with these types of things in 1 out of 5 loans. I think that not 1 out of 5 don't make it to settlement, but there's some kind of major issue that needs to be addressed and overcome during the process. But look, if you review all these things up front, then you don't need to address. You've already figured it all out. And now it's just verifying anything that needs to be verified to get the settlement, because you already know that they meet all the guidelines. So I would say probably more like, 1 in 20 loans don't make it to the settlement table that for reasons of qualification, which is actually, if you consider there's, thousands and thousands of loans closing every week, that's a pretty high number.
Yeah. And how much of this is discussed in that initial 15-minute consultation that you guys have?
Yeah. So what we let the customer know is we say, we are going to go over this with you in detail. We're going to make sure that all of the information we provide you is very accurate so you can make really high quality decisions. So we let them know, because we can't go through all of the paperwork. We don't have it yet, but we let them know that our process is detailed and you're going to get high quality information that you can count on.
All right, very good. Well, if you have any questions, again, all the contact information is in the show description for you, but you can also just call 484-352-4151 for those listening on podcasts, or check out smartmortgageshow.com. But if you haven't joined us on YouTube, come check us out. We appreciate the support there that we've gotten on YouTube. Please subscribe, like the video, leave a comment if you have one as well for Bill. And hopefully this will kind of give you an idea of some of the things to look out for, why things go wrong sometimes, but Cross Country's there to kind of help you every step of the way through that mortgage process. And again, Bill is there if you have anything else on your mind, any questions, or want to begin that process. So, Bill, thanks for your time as always. We'll catch up next week.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
This program is for informational purposes only. Please consult a qualified professional before taking any action. Bill Litton is a loan advisor and regional president with Cross Country Mortgage, NMLS number 147060.